Every person without God is in a dire mental condition. Doesn't mean their rational faculties are not functioning, but it does mean that they are in the kingdom of darkness, right? It does mean that they are under the power of the prince of the power of the air, the spirit that now works in the children of disobedience. So we have to understand that anyone who is not a believer is operating in some sense with a demonic influence. It may be external, coming at them through the culture, but there's something in them, in their corruption, in their fallenness, in their natural perversion that deceives them. The heart is desperately wicked, deceitful and desperately wicked. Who can know it? So even the prophet Jeremiah says it's hard to understand the heart. It's hard to understand, it's hard to diagnose to what degree is someone functioning under the direct or indirect influence of Satan, and to what degree is just the flesh having found a path of perversion and following that perversion. But going back to the original question, to what degree is an unconverted person under the influence of Satan? And that had to be answered in any individual situation. There was in the New Testament, you remember, the young man throwing himself into the fire because demons were controlling him. But I also think that Satan operates in ways that aren't so manifest. In fact, what speaks to that is when Jesus began his ministry and went into the synagogue to teach, there were times when demons started screaming at him out of the mouths of the people in the synagogues. This must have been a shock to the synagogue people, because these would be people who were part of the synagogue community, and it wouldn't have been necessarily known that these people were possessed to some degree by Satan or by demons. But the presence of Christ elicited that, as under his influence the demons sort of gave up their cover. So I think it's far more common than we would think, and it's far more common in a more refined part of the population than we would understand. It's not just the people that are homeless, the people that are drug addicts, the people that have lost their reasoning faculties. It's not just those people. Satan operates in everyone, and even in leaders. He operates in leaders. We see this, illustrations of this in the prophets in the Old Testament. So I think to try to diagnose that is very difficult, because Satan is elusive and there is so much deception. So the way that I would approach that is to say it doesn't matter to what degree you are under the influence of Satan, whether it's to the point where he's taken over your rational faculties, or whether it's to the point that you're just a perverse person, even though you look pretty normal on the outside. To whatever degree Satan has taken you over, the solution is the same. Whether you're in the synagogue and you're appearing to everybody around you as a responsible worshiping Jew, or whether you're the maniac of Gadara cutting himself, living in a cave and bereft of any rational thought, the solution is the same, right? The solution is the same. What needed to happen to that synagogue attender, that self-righteous Jew, was that he needed to recognize his sin and embrace Christ as Savior. And when Christ came into the life of the maniac, he was immediately sane. He immediately became an evangel for the gospel, as that account indicates to us. So I don't know that it's in our power to be able to diagnose everyone. Now, one other comment on this. Mental illness is something else. If something's wrong with your brain, that can be diagnosed. That can be read by certain tests and evaluations, the EKG or whatever it might be, or an electroencephalogram of the brain. If you have a brain problem, that can be objectively diagnosed. But what we're talking about are things that, in some case, could be objectively diagnosed because they're the product of drug addiction, long-term drug addiction, which does have an effect on the function of the brain. It's not possible to take drugs or be an alcoholic without it deteriorating your mental faculties. But again, the issue is not to be able to diagnose every single individual, but to understand that the solution for everyone is the same. So it would be so helpful if there was a way to care for these people so these people could be reached with the gospel. But that, again, I have to say, part of the judgment of God on this nation shows up in the indifference that this country has and this society has to people who need special care. I mean, we kill babies, we throw people who are unable to function socially in the street, on the gutter, and then we want to protect the rights of the women to kill the babies and the rights of the homeless to live in the gutter. This is the perversion of the system that we have. So, again, I think far more of what you see in those people's lives is the direct activity of Satan than people would think.